Good morning to you. Good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, Pastor Ben. Hope that you are getting your writing done. Haven't heard from you in the group. Good morning, Lady Judy. Make sure you stop in today, Pastor Ben, and let me know how you are doing. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Lady Barbara. Glad to hear that your writing is going well. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Hope that everybody is having a great and wonderful day. Tomorrow is going to be episode 25, and I will be doing a couple of giveaways for tomorrow. And then tomorrow will be my break. So at episode 25, I'm going to take a break and I will probably come back in, I think, a week. I believe it's actually a week. I'll be back. But if you are a Patreon partner, you'll see what I'm doing in the week that I'm not on broadcast. So you'll get a sneak peek into what I'm doing on my break. Yeah, but you got to be a Patreon partner in order to find out. You'll get the scoop before everyone else does. All right. So, tomorrow, episode 25, we'll be doing some Black History Month kind of facts. And I'll be doing some giveaways. We will do a little bit of reading. And then we'll be taking a break. And then I'll be back in a week to continue our Daring Dialogues episodes. I will continue posting on the Facebook page Daring Dialogues any news that happens. So if you are a person who wants to stay kind of abreast of what's happening in the news, you can follow my Facebook page, Daring Dialogues, as well. I'm always posting on that page. All right. So just wanted to give you all a heads up. It'll be today and tomorrow. Then I'll be breaking for about a week. And then I'll be back to continue our episodes. However, I will still continue to share news articles and updates on the Daring Dialogues page. And if you want to know what I'm doing on that week, you can check me out on patreon.com/Daring Dialogues. And if you are a patron, you will see some behind the scenes content of what I'll be doing on that week. All right. So this is Monday Motivation. I want to thank those of you for joining us who always join. And those of you who are new, Daring Dialogues normally airs Monday through Friday. And I cover everything from motivation to relationships to religion and theology to history to finance and health. All right. Every single day we cover something different. So if you are a finance person, if you're a health buff, you can catch us on Fridays. If you're into theology and worldviews, you can catch us on Thursdays. If you are into relationships, you can catch us on Wednesdays. If you are into Black history, all year long, you can catch us on Tuesdays. And of course, Mondays is motivation. So, as we continue our Monday motivation, we are finishing up Tony Evans' Kingdom Disciples book. And before we get into Tony Evans' Kingdom Disciples book, where he's talking about the family, God's divine use of the family, and then we're going to go into his purpose for the ecclesia. Now, Tony Evans calls it the church, but the correct term is actually ecclesia. So that's the term that you'll hear me use quite a bit as I'm reading, as I'm subbing his word, because again, the correct term is ecclesia. The church is a building, it's a physical structure, it's the institutional formats, but the people are the ecclesia. All right. So before we get into that, I am going to read you one more time from this lovely book, Path to Happiness. It's got several different things in here that you can do, 50 ways to add joy to your life every day. And I want to read the one on friendship. I want to read the one on friendship. How can you add joy to your life? You can add joy to your life by having good friends. Now, today is a special day for me, memorial wise, because this day, one of my best friends, my grandmother, I have one grandmother that is still living, and my other grandmother passed on this day, February 4th, 2011. And there is not really a time that goes by or a month that goes by that there's not something that happens or something someone says or something someone does that doesn't either remind me of my grandmother or doesn't cause me to pause and think, what would my grandmother say about this if she were here? And it's a very special day for me because my grandmother and I always had a close relationship, and I happened to be the last person to hear her speak or hear her last words before she passed on to be with the Lord. I was the only person in the hospital at the time, because she was like in, I guess, like the hospice care for the hospital. And it was in the middle of the night. It was like 4 in the morning. And my grandmother had just kind of been going in and out of consciousness. And I was sitting next to her on the floor and I was holding her hand and praying for her. And she, all of a sudden, she just sat up, like she was like fully awake, fully aware. It was like the most activity wise that she had moved like in the last couple of days, because I was able to get there the day before she passed. And she sat up on the hospital bed, and I was kneeling on the floor and I was holding her hand, but she was looking straight ahead, and she had this look of awe on her face, and her eyes were like widening, and I could tell that she was looking at something. And to me, she was looking into eternity. Because when people say to me, well, how do you know eternity is real? How do you know heaven is real? I share with them my experience with my grandmother. And so she sits up, and I'm still holding her hand, and she's gripping my hand really tightly at this point. And I'm like, Grandma, are you okay? What's going on? What's wrong? But she had this glow and this awe, this look of incredible awe on her face. And she was just looking straight ahead. And there was, in the natural, there was nothing there, but the wall and a framed picture. And she looked at me like, she turned around and she looked at me like, why are you interrupting me? That was the look she gave me. And when she looked at me, she said, I'm going to heaven. And then she laid back down. And after that, she didn't speak anymore. So, my grandmother was not one who was like really, really super spiritual. She had a relationship with the Lord. But that moment solidified some things for me about eternity. And so she didn't speak anymore after that. My relatives continued to come in throughout the day, and about 4:30, between 4 and 4:30 on today, in 2011, she went to be with the Lord. But she didn't speak anymore after that. And so I was able to, share with the family what I had seen, and it really brought a measure of comfort to our family. And I say all that to say, sometimes we tend to look for friendship or look for these close bonds with people outside of our family, when sometimes some of your family members can really be some of the best friends that you will ever have. I have cousins to this day that I'm very, very close with, that I consider very close friends because of the bonds that we have shared throughout, our respective childhoods. So I want to get into this a little bit about this topic of friendship. How are you when it comes to friendship? Is there someone with whom you share your life's joys and disappointments? Can you always count on this person to be loyally by your side or only in fair weather? Is your relationship one of unconditional trust, or do you each often withhold facts and feelings from the other? Such questions are intriguing for most of us to ponder. Further, according to mounting evidence from psychology and medicine, their answer holds a key to our wellness, vitality, and longevity. Though behavioral scientists for the past generation have affirmed a measurable link between friendship and well being, the concept is hardly new. Indeed, the Greek philosopher Aristotle addressed the topic nearly 2,500 years ago in his major work on ethical conduct and character virtues, Nicomachean Ethics. In a highly influential formulation, he distinguished among three types of friendship based on utility, on pleasure, and on virtue. Those friendships composing utility were basically business relations with mutual tangible benefits such as money or power. These would be kind of what we would call acquaintances at this time in history, right? We would kind of call them people we know, but we know them because we attend church together, or we know them because we work together, or we know them because we have some shared interests online. And so we might be in a Facebook group, and we might call those our Facebook friends or our Facebook group friends, right? Then there are friendships based on pleasure that were founded on fun interests such as attending sports events or concerts together. So there are friends that you just hang out with. They're your hangout buddies, or they're your school reunion friends, right? You don't necessarily see them all the time, but you all do get together to enjoy certain events. And then he says, virtuous friendship is the highest of the three, involving emotional concern and compassionate care. These would be the friends that the scriptures might describe as friends who stick closer than a brother. I'll never forget, there was one verse I came across in Proverbs that I found to be so very true. And it says something like, better is a friend that is near than a brother who is far away. Sometimes your friends who are really nearby, or your friends who are close by, can help you in a time of need faster than a family member could who might be far away. So these kinds of friendships that he's talking about that involve emotional concern and compassionate care is not necessarily everybody that you come across, or even everybody that's in your circle. There are certain friends of mine that I don't have to tell them when I am going through something. They just happen to, I don't know, they spiritually pick up on it, and they'll call me and they'll say, "Hey, I was interceding for you. I was praying for you. Is something wrong? Is something going on?" And then I can just launch into sharing with them some specifics and what I need prayer and intercession on. Those kinds of friends in your life are invaluable. People who check up on you, people who want to know how you are doing as a person, all right? Beyond what you can give them, beyond an offering, beyond a PayPal donation, all right? People who just simply want to know how you're doing, people who care about your well being, people who want to know how your family is doing, people who want to know that you're in good health, people who just want you to do well because they want you to do well and there's no ulterior motive behind it. They're not looking to get anything from you. If you never gave them a dollar, not the Beyonce check on me either. If you never gave them a dollar, they would still be in your life because they value you as a person. When I say that I am someone's friend, I know I don't always get this back. All right. I know it's not always reciprocated. But when I call you a friend, I actually mean it. When I say someone is my friend, all right, I'm going to call you. I'm going to Facebook message you. I'm going to inbox you. I'm going to ask how you are. Okay. If you ask me to pray for something, I'm going to pray for you. I'm not going to put it off. I might email you if I can't, if I see that you've been offline for a little bit. I want to know how you are as a person. All right. So if I call somebody my friend, I actually mean it. Even if you are a Facebook friend, there are people that I've known on Facebook for 5, 6, 7 years that I've never physically met them in person, but I have talked to them on the phone because I don't want 5,000 random people that I'm Facebook friends with and I don't know you. That's not cool to me, right? So just having a whole bunch of people that are attached to your life and you're not really concerned about them, um, it's problematic to me. Some people, they don't mind that, but I do. All right. So I don't throw around the word friend lightly. Right now, I've been doing this since December. I've been literally trying to go and look at every single friend page that I have. I try to do, 20, 30 people a day. I try to go and look at their page and just kind of see what's going on in life. Did I miss something? I've missed some weddings. I've missed some engagements, right? Because realistically, you can't keep up with that many people if you want to be involved in people's lives. So, I'm offering congratulations late. I'm like, man, I gotta keep up. So some of my friends have gotten married. I didn't know they got married. They had a whole ceremony and everything. I'm like, whoa. Some of my friends have had children recently, and I didn't know. So we have to kind of slow down sometimes when we realize that our life is just going through the motions. We really have to be intentional about slowing our life down, being further connected to the people that we say we're connected to, right? Getting back involved in the tangibleness of friendship because Facebook can take that away. It can take away the tangibleness of friendship, and you find yourself just going through the motion, scrolling and clicking, rather than communicating and actually being involved in the lives of those that you are attached to. All right. So I have made it my goal this year to make sure that I'm more tangibly involved with the people that I'm friends with. All right. So he calls virtuous friendship the highest of the three. In his view, Aristotle's view, friendship based on virtue has the greatest impact on human well being in everyday life. Aristotle's outlook was extended during the Middle Ages by the influential rabbinic scholar physician Moses Maimonides. I might be pronouncing that wrong though. Living in Spain and Egypt more than 8 centuries ago, he asserted that friendship is vital for individual wellness. In a treatise of health advice written for a young prince in Saladin's royal court, he advised, "It is well known that one requires friends all his lifetime. When one is in good health and prosperous, he enjoys the company of his friends. In time of trouble, he is in need of them. In old age, when his body is weak, he is assisted by them." Since the advent of behavioral medicine in the mid 1970s, investigators have closely studied what is known as social support. From the inception of this field, they've differentiated instrumental support from emotional support. That is, caregiving help involving tangibles such as money or food, cooking or house cleaning, from intangibles such as empathy and advice. Increasingly, researchers have come to focus on one specific aspect, the confidant relationship, because of its importance for our well being. The range of studies has been wide, from drug abuse and depression to health practices amongst young Mexican men and health practices among American and Canadian teenagers. Repeatedly, research shows that having a trusted friend with whom to share emotions lessens virtually all forms of risky and self destructive behavior. Just having at least one friend that you can confide in, that can talk you down off the wall, one friend you can confide in that can talk you out of doing something that is self destructive or detrimental to your life can make all the difference. This last week, I don't know, some of you may have heard about it. The TSA worker that jumped, I think it was in Florida. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. TSA worker jumped off the roof in front of everybody and killed himself. They don't know the reason why yet. But my God, he had just clocked out of work. You said Orlando? He had just clocked out of work. And that was his next thought after clocking out, was to go and commit suicide at his job in front of thousands of people who were in the airport at that time. You got to ask some questions. You have to say, what happened? And I wonder if this recent shutdown where TSA workers were not paid, if that was connected to why he felt so hopeless. Because the reality is we may go into a shutdown again. And the reality is many of the people who went through the shutdown, their credit is now jacked up because of that. Yes, they're getting back pay, some of them. But if you're a federally contracted worker, if you worked on contract, if you were a small business owner and had a contract with the government, you're not getting that back. So they're jacked up. All right. And so decisions at the top have consequences. And we don't know yet. I don't know if there'll be an update report on, the reasoning behind it. But good morning, Lady Evelyn. Good morning, Lady Latoya. Good morning, Prophet Jonathan. I don't know the reasoning behind it, but the reality is there are a lot of people whose lives are now in recovery because of those 35 days of the shutdown. Yes, they may be getting their back pay, but I haven't heard any credit bureau who doesn't report to anyone. I haven't heard any credit bureau say, we're going to readjust people's scores as a result of what the government did to them that they could not control. So there are still ongoing effects of what happened. There's money that our economy can't recover because of what happened. All right. So when something like that happens, thankfully there were people around our communities that were helping people that were strapped for cash, that didn't have food, right? Grocery stores were giving out free food to people who were on this government shutdown. All of that matters. Humanity matters. The way we treat one another matters. But it's helpful to have a confidant as well. Studies also demonstrate that people with a confidant have better physical health and are less likely to suffer from a variety of chronic medical problems. At the end of 2017, when both my husband and I had surgery at the same time, we were not same exact days, but we were both in recovery at the same time. Both of us were in a very weakened and vulnerable state. And I appreciate every person that came by, that checked on us, that came and helped us when we were half under medication and in pain. I appreciate every single person that came by, helped us move furniture, because we had to live, literally we were had to live downstairs in our living room because we couldn't move. You don't know what that's like until you've had surgery and you have to, major surgery, and you have to recover from it. All right? People who came by and brought us food and stayed with us overnight just to make sure we were okay. Like, you can't buy that. You can't. I mean, you could rent help, but it's not the same as your friends doing it and sacrificing their time and their sleep to help you. Such individuals also show greater emotional resilience and less vulnerability to depression. As reported by Dr. Paul Surtees and his colleagues at Strangeways Research Laboratory in England, there's evidence that having a confidant can add 4 to 5 years to your life. Not a bad payoff at all. So, celebrate a confidant today. Whom do you most trust in sharing your intimate feelings, your joys, frustrations, and decision making plans? When and how did you first become friends, and what keeps you emotionally close? To help strengthen your bond, be selective about what you unburden, as venting about small things is unproductive. Be sure to express gratitude to your friend, for no one wants to feel exploited by others. Friends, I encourage you this year, if you are feeling like I have no friends, I have no confidants, I have no one I can talk to, I have no one I can trust, I'm encouraging you to look out amongst yourself and find and develop a friendship. It is never too late to develop a friendship. Both of my grandmothers, let me see if I have this up still. I do. Both of my grandmothers were friends. I'll show you their little picture. Let me see if I can blow it up here. It's a little on the fuzzy side, so I'll hold it back here. All right. Those are my two grannies. All right. This is my granny here that is Cherokee, and she is still alive. She's, Lord willing, she'll be 99 this year. And this is my grandmother that passed in 2011. They were lifelong friends. They both met each other when they were at times in their life where they were both single women. My grandmother, who's Cherokee, was divorced, and my grandmother that passed away was a widow. And they became friends, and their lives began to kind of center around their children because both of them were single mothers raising 11 children each by themselves. So one of these days I'll get an opportunity to write about their story from my perspective. Some of their characteristics are in my Church Loves novel series. The grandmothers in that novel series are based on my grandmothers. But they were both raising 11 children, let me emphasize, each by themselves. So I don't want to hear, you know, let me not get into that. They were raising 11 children each by themselves. See, I didn't want to say it, Prophet. I didn't want to say it. But they were in some rough times to be raising 11 children each by themselves. Good morning, life transitions. So I have super, super mad respect for my grandmothers. Like, you can't tell me anything. I got super mad respect. And they did it without a sugar daddy. They did it without becoming side pieces. Hello, somebody. See, I want to start preaching. Um, oh Lord. Listen, they showed me how to keep it together and be honorable in your single womanhood, in your single motherhood, and be honorable in it. They didn't take monies from men folks. They didn't bring men in around their children's. Listen, they remained single too. Some of, I mean, because they were like, I'm not just bringing in just anybody around my 11 children that I got to raise. So I was like, man, they're the MVPs as far as I'm concerned. They are those two MVPs, honorable, um, and just their life stories, their legacy. Um, let me throw you some people. Just they taught me so much in how they lived their lives, just as honorable women. Not saying that they didn't make any mistakes and all of that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying people in my community knew that those two women did not play. They didn't play about their home. They didn't play about their children. Yeah, they didn't play. They didn't allow the fact that they were single mothers to be a deterrent for them. My grandmother that passed away, she did spend some time on government assistance. She actually went through, I think, one of the first iterations of the government welfare to work program, and she was featured in the newspaper. I actually have the article where she went back to school. She got a certification. She got off welfare, bought a home. We still, we still have that home today in our family. And, she was one of those success stories. Um, she became an x-ray technician, retired from that field, and bought a home. She was able to, move forward somewhat in life. And it was funny because, older people tend to make these jokes about us younger people. She would always say, I don't understand how, I'm on a fixed retirement income and my children, and my grands, they have this, they make money, but they're always coming to ask me for money. So she would have these jokes about, saving your money, and she would joke about, our spending habits, because it's like she's like, I'm the one on the fixed income, but I'm always giving you all money. What are y'all doing with y'all money? So we would have, comedic moments with her about this. But she was just a really good, solid example. People would come literally from all over the country and spend their vacations in her house, sitting at her feet, just listening to her talk. Now, if you had a grandmother like that, it would behoove you to do the same thing you see everybody else doing, because that's what I did. I would spend my summer vacations from college going to grandma's house, cleaning up for grandma, doing grandma's hair, rubbing grandma's feet, sitting at grandmother's feet, and listening to grandmother talk. Because I was trying to scoop up all the wisdom that I needed for life. And guess what? Everything she told me is true. I am very thankful that I didn't bypass that time, that I didn't say, oh, I got something better to do than hang out with grandma. Because, children these days, they feel like they have something better to do than hang out with grandma. Excuse me. They feel like they have something better to do than hang out with the elders in their life. When sometimes your elders have some lessons to share with you that if you listen, you won't have to repeat the mistakes they made. But, that's a whole other lesson about respect for your elders. So let's jump into My Daughter Loves To. Awesome, Latoya. She will benefit greatly from it in life. Tony Evans' book, Kingdom Disciples, Heaven's Representatives on Earth. We are finishing up his section on the divine use of the family, and then we're going to jump into the ecclesia. When the entire world had become corrupted and it was destroyed in the great flood, God chose to start the recreation of the world's population through the institution of the family. And I think I wrote about this last week on my page about the family. The family. Before you have your own family, right? The family is the institution ordained by God. Catch the bonus content, Respect for Elders on Patreon. I might do a segment on that. Remind me, inbox me that, Prophet. Starting the world's population over through family. Before you get married, you already have a family. That family is important. That institution is important. Family, many times, is where we learn to treat the rest of the world. So if we don't have that, then you can understand why we see some of the things we see occurring. Let me say that one more time. Family is where you learn how to treat the rest of the world. So if you don't have that, if you don't have family bonds or you don't have family structure, it's going to play out in how you treat other people in the world in general. All right? Some people have had to relearn things, or some people have had to learn things altogether because they didn't have a family. They didn't have a family bond. They didn't have a family structure. And so a lot of things that we're holding to the charge of young people, we have to go back and say, did they come out of a family? Did they come out of a family structure? Were they in foster care all of their life, which is not a family structure, by the way. I'm not talking about being with a foster family. I'm talking about being in foster care, in custody of the state. They might not have that structure at all. And so sometimes we're holding children to an account for something that was never instilled in them. This is why it really does bother me when I hear adults talking about children in a very negative, derogatory way, divorcing them from parental responsibility and guidance. None of us as children asked to come into this world. We didn't. We didn't ask to come here. So when you talk about children and you say they're bad, they're rude, they're disrespectful, they're brats, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to hear it. I'm just be honest with you. I don't want to hear it. Because that so-called bad, rude, disrespectful, bratty child came out of the womb of an adult. Lest we forget that we were also children at some point. And we didn't have it together. And our brains were not fully formed. So we did stupid stuff. Lest we forget. Sometimes we look at children and we're like, what are they doing? They don't know what they're doing because their brain is not fully formed. That's why they have you there. That's why they have adults. That's why they're supposed to have parental supervision. Sight and sound supervision. That's why, because their brains are not fully formed and they still doing stuff. And they don't know why they're doing it. They're children. They're doing children things. They're doing what children do. That's why God instituted what's called a family structure, guidance, care, concern, empathy, compassion. All right? So, family, if you don't have it, if you haven't had it, if you haven't had proper healthy dynamics in a family, you may have to learn them, and that is okay. It's okay to say, you know, some of the things that I went through in my family, even if you have a two-parent family, that doesn't always mean that you had healthy examples in front of you. Some people assume, well, they had a mom and a dad, but what was the mom and dad relationship like? Was the dad always gone? Was the dad abusive? Was the dad apathetic? Was the dad like, I just brought him into the world, but it's your mom's responsibility to take care of you? So just because both parents are there doesn't mean that that relationship was healthy. All right? So we have to understand that. And we do need to say, I don't know the circumstances out of which a person came, but I do know that through Christ and through the Word of God, that that person's how they live or how they choose to walk or how they choose to operate in this life can be transformed. Can be transformed. I grew up in a single parent house. My dad was allowed to come around occasionally. So there were some things that I had to learn about a family structure because I didn't get the traditional mom and dad structure. And that's okay. I believe it has helped me to understand other children who didn't get that structure. So I use my experiences so that I can be more empathetic and more compassionate towards children who didn't grow up in a two-parent environment. I don't bash them over the head because I recognize that there's probably some things that they did not get in the environment that they are in. Now it's up to me as the adult to say, hey, why are you doing that? What happened in your family's home? Why do you associate yelling, screaming, kicking, and fighting as someone really loving you? Because there are a lot of African Americans who actually associate yelling, kicking, screaming, and fighting as they must really love you. Now, if I'm wrong, somebody tell me I'm wrong. I don't have to raise my voice or yell at you in order for you to understand that I really care. But I noticed that that was a pattern. All right. And then when I would talk to some of my students, they would say, well, I didn't really think you were serious because you weren't yelling. And I'm like, really? Yeah. Because when my mom is serious about something, she's yelling and she's cussing and she used my whole name. So you weren't yelling, so I didn't think you cared. Or you weren't yelling, so I didn't think you were serious. And I didn't think you wanted me to follow your instructions because you weren't yelling at me. So when we get to the bottom of why someone responds the way they respond, then you can start moving through that. Then you can start saying, okay, now I get it. Let's have some communication about that. When I talk to you and I want you to get something done, I'm not going to raise my voice. I'm just going to repeat it. And I'm going to say it several times. If you don't do it, there's going to be consequences. I'm not going to yell because that's what you're used to. I'm going to This is how I'm going to talk to you in this space. Are we good? Yes, we're totally good. I get it now. And then you move on. You don't make a whole big deal out of it. But you do realize that, again, in your institution of family, what you learn in that family will affect how you treat the world around you. So, Tony Evans is talking about Adam and Eve and Noah. He says Noah's three sons became the basis for the restoration of civilization. When God wanted to build his own nation and raise up a people who were holy and set apart for him, he started this through the divine institution of the family. He chose Abraham along with Abraham's wife Sarah as the vessel through which to create an entire nation. In fact, God's intentions for blessing the entire world came through Abraham and the seed of his family. We read in Genesis 18, Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all the nations on earth will be blessed through him. For I have chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised him. So Abraham had a responsibility to direct his children and his household after the Lord. And as he did that, God said, I'm going to bring about exactly what I promised Abraham. And that promise will pass on generationally. Some of us are where we are today because our forefathers, our ancestors, both immediate ancestors and our predecessor ancestors, prayed and they made promises to God. And God promised them some things about their future generations. Some of us think that we have attained what we've attained simply because of our own efforts. When if you just look at your history, you'll realize that had it not been for generations that came before you, had it not been for their prayers, had it not been for their struggles, had it not been for their push, had it not been for their determination for future generations to have better, we wouldn't be in the position where we are now. Is it the end all be all? No. But we're certainly not walking around with physical stocks and bonds on. That is, if we're not in prison. All right. Some people still have mental shackles on. Notice that God validated the importance of family to Abraham when he said that his promises to him related to nation building were directly tied to Abraham's influence on his own children. I forget the gentleman's name, Jason. I can't remember his last name right now, but he is the founder of the Cave of Adullam out of Detroit. And if you've ever seen any of his videos, I shared several of them this past week on my page. He said something very powerful. And he said, there are men out here who are trying to build nations without and trying to do it without a family. Where is your family? Because Abraham's promise of nation building was directly tied to his own influence over his own children. There are a lot of people trying to influence the world, and they're ignoring the children that they're supposed to be influencing in their own house. And then when their children grow up and begin to resent their goal of nation building, this becomes a problem. Because some folks say, well, I'm doing this for my children. One of the greatest things that you could do for your children is to invest in them. Not just the concept, but invest in them. So when you invest in them, They have the character and the mental capacity and the moral capacity and the character capacity to carry what you want to build for a legacy. But if you're building the legacy over here and you're not preparing your child to take it over, you may just grow up with a child who says, I want nothing to do with this so-called nation building, legacy building that you're trying to establish, because I saw how you ignored me in trying to establish it. So why from the responsibility of in me as your child? Just something to think about. Our nation building. Abraham's greatness as the father of a nation didn't simply come by virtue of who he was. God instructed Abraham to train his children along with his entire household to live their lives under God, essentially as disciples. This is because the saga of a nation is the saga of its families written in a larger picture. God so values the family that he would regularly remind his nation that it was built on family when he would speak about his plan and history to them, because he would regularly communicate it in terms of family. He would refer to himself in familial descriptions such as, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He didn't just say, I am the God of the universe, I am the God of created things. No, he made it personal. He put it in a family. I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am the God of your ancestors. Likewise, when God expanded his kingdom in the New Testament through the ecclesia, he would regularly do it with family terminology, such as household of faith, brothers, sisters, etc. The family motif for the advancement of his kingdom appears throughout Scripture. And when God chose to redeem the entire world through the sacrifice of his own son on the cross, he placed Jesus into the context of a family on earth. Jesus did not come in a circular saucer with blinking lights. He didn't come as a green alien saying, we come in peace, we come in peace. No. We're willing to believe anything about how the world was created rather than believe that God set his son in a family. He set his son in a family. He set Jesus in a family to be raised, to grow up into a full-grown human being, male, to learn. Jesus had to learn. Jesus went to the temple. He was asking questions, but he was also learning. The scripture says he grew in knowledge and grew in both wisdom and stature. And he did that before laying down his life as our Savior. Jesus did not come into the earth as a full-grown man. Now, just as God redeemed the first marriage through the sacrifice of an animal and the covering of their nakedness with the animal skin, through redemption in Jesus Christ, families can be restored today when the members who make up the family choose to align themselves under God as his kingdom disciples. As we maintain the foundation of the family through kingdom husbands and wives, raising kingdom families under the lordship of Jesus, we will see the expansion of God's kingdom. We will leave legacies in the lives of our children and grandchildren that last forever. The Ecclesia, chapter 11. Excuse me. Tony asked the question, do you enjoy microwave popcorn while watching a good movie? What always amazes me about popcorn is the complete transformation that occurs of the once hard, coarse seeds into soft, warm popcorn. This metamorphosis occurs because the microwave heats the moisture inside of every seed until it turns to steam. Once it becomes steam, the pressure becomes so great that the shell can no longer contain the moisture and an explosion occurs. What was once inedible and indigestible is now tasty, edible, and delicious. The point is that environment is everything. When the microwave performs as it was intended to, the seeds of corn are transformed. What a microwave is to popcorn, the local ecclesia is to the Christian and his or her growth as a kingdom disciple. The local assembly is the context and environment that God has created to transform believers into what we were created and redeemed to be, fully devoted followers of Jesus the Christ. The ecclesia also is his authorized vehicle to manifest his kingdom rule and authority in the world. Assemblies that do not prioritize discipleship have missed their calling. And parachurch organizations that do not plug into the local ecclesia are out of alignment, since it is the ecclesia that is the pillar and support of the truth. Since all true believers possess the Holy Spirit, we already have the internal moisture necessary for the transformation process to occur. Therefore, if the transformation does not happen, we know that either the seeds are not in the proper environment, positioning themselves for transformation, or the microwave of the ecclesia is not functioning, producing the spiritual heat and growth in order to make a difference. A kingdom ecclesia is a group of believers who covenant together to disciple its members in order to model and transfer heaven's values in history. Now, that can be done inside of a physical facility. That can be done in a home setting. That can be done in a public meeting space. The important piece here is it's believers who are covenanted together to disciple the members in order to model and transfer heaven's values in history. Like a foreign embassy that officially represents the homeland, the ecclesia is to serve as God's embassy on earth that represents heaven. So wherever you are, wherever you're fellowshipping, wherever you're worshiping, the question is, does this look like God's embassy in heaven? Is what I'm doing, is what I'm participating in, is it representative of what God's embassy is doing in heaven? Or is it just activity? Because I can be a part of lots of activities and still not be doing what God's embassy in heaven has told me I should be doing in the earth. The absence of kingdom disciples today is evident by the divide within our assemblies. In many, there's a commitment to racial identity only. There's a commitment to class division. In other words, we only want the wealthy in our assembly. And believe it or not, there are some assemblies that go in the exact reverse. We only want the poor in our assembly, or we only want, how can I put it, the hood in our assembly, because we only see those people as being really authentic. There are some assemblies that I have gone into that if you appear to have, you said no sound. Can you all hear me? If you appear to have more than the members, than the assembly believers, sometimes there can be jealousy over that. Or there can be a discounting of you over that, depending on what assembly you go to. Some people can actually despise wealth. All right? So I've seen some assemblies where if you don't have a lot of money, they don't really want you to be a part of that assembly because there's a certain class of people that attend there. And then there are other assemblies where if you do have wealth, you can also still be shunned in that assembly. All right? And then he says that there's also a divide of political affiliation that can take precedence over commitment to the kingdom. So you might be in an assembly where most of the people that attend might consider themselves conservative, or most of the people that attend might consider themselves liberal. And their political vision may supersede the kingdom of God. All right? These are some of the things that many assemblies are dealing with right now. There are people who are leaving assemblies, and I'm going to stop here today. There are people who are leaving assemblies because of these things. There's either a heavy emphasis on a racial identity, or there's a class division going on, or there's a political division going on, or it's all three. And they're like, where's the kingdom? Where is Jesus? Where is the message of the cross? Where is the message of salvation? Where is the message of redemption? And have you taken that space where you're supposed to be teaching and discipling? Have you taken that space and turned it into a propaganda space? Because I'm looking at some of the messages that are coming out, and it just sounds like propaganda. Like, you shouldn't be telling people who to vote. Excuse me. You shouldn't be telling people who to vote for. Oh, that's the other one. Or has your assembly become a special groups assembly? In other words, as a prophet pointed out, is your assembly known as the assembly where all the Greeks attend? Well, if I'm not Greek and all of your activities are centered around Greek life, then now Greek life is superseding what I'm supposed to be learning about kingdom life. All right? So you have to look at that. That's something that we need to look at in our assemblies. Is the message of Christ central? Is the message of the kingdom central? Or are you spending people's time week after week focusing on and tailoring everything toward a specific theme? Remember, Jesus is our focus if you're in the kingdom. I'll just have to say that. Jesus is the focus if you're in the kingdom. I can only speak to if you're in the kingdom. All right? So, this has been another episode of Daring Dialogues. I want to thank you for your time and attention. I hope that I have said something today that was encouraging, that was motivating, that was thought provoking, something that will get you thinking about the elders in your life. All right? Is the message of the kingdom central in my assembly? Not your blessings or your seed offering, but is the message of the kingdom central in my assembly? When you were in service on Sunday, did you hear Jesus mentioned? Was Jesus the main attraction? Was he the focus? That's something that leaders have to pay attention to. Make sure that you don't get off track, because it is easy in the society in which we live to get off track. All right? Even as a leader. So, remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness. So please go out today and be light. Tomorrow will be our last episode before I go to break for about a week. And again, if you are on Patreon, you'll get a little insight into what I'll be doing while I'm offline for Daring Dialogues. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness. So please do go out today and be light. Be light online if you're not going out. Be light in your community if you're going out today. Those of you who are still dealing with this impossible cold snaps and storms all across the country, please stay warm. Please stay safe. In Jesus' name. Take care and God bless.